Wow, he's excited. Are you excited? Thanks for being here. It's second to last talk. I know it's a tough place to be sitting over there, but yeah, let's do this. I am actually really excited to be here. You may not be able to tell from my tone of voice or from my face, but I suffer from this condition called being Finnish. Um, and so when I'm excited, I truly do mean it. Just my face doesn't participate in the whole sort of collaborative session. The reason I'm excited to be here today is that, well, I haven't really been excited about technology for a while. I've been doing web development for close to 20 years now, which is way too many years to do one thing. Um, and like after you do something for a while, you get really intimate with your medium, and you start to feel like you see the brickwork behind the facade. And to me, like web development kind of feels a little bit like rearranging rectangles in like increasingly complicated ways. And now that's not to this. I'm a front-end engineer myself, so I'm very much aware of all the complexity that goes into it. But then when we go, oh, this is too complex, let's make it simpler, like remix. Okay, great. We just made it, the thing that we made complicated slightly simpler. It feels like we're not really solving novel problems. And so I'm excited to be here because I'm finally excited about something. And over the years, I've gotten a little bit excited about other things. There's been all kinds of things that come up, like Web3 and metaverse and all other nonsense that turns out to be ultimately very disappointing. And so I've been guarded about this, getting emotionally attached to something new. And for a long time I was wondered, like, is this AI thing? Is it actually exciting, or is it just yet another sort of fever dream? But no, after having worked for about a year and a half in this technology, I'm really bullish on the power that this thing has. I'm very excited to share with you. So let's see. What drew me to the web to begin with was its sort of ability to sort of really enable collaboration, between people, connect people. I'm from Finland, a small country, but I have friends from all over the world. And it also enables creativity. But I don't know, for a few years I haven't really been feeling that energy from the things that we build. And I almost gave up. I took a couple years off, actually. And if you go back even further, I never really even wanted to be a developer to begin with. I actually went to school to study literature, not computer science. There's this conversation been going on today, like how many people have a computer science degree. I don't have one, but if you want to pursue that, I think you totally should. The reason why I love literature is that I've always been fascinated by stories. Stories not only, they power all form of entertainment. Like every movie, every comic book, every play starts as a story. But more than that, stories is how we sort of connect to each other. So I wonder, why haven't we as technologists, come up with better ways to enable people to tell their stories? Other art forms have their tools, like visual artists have Photoshop, movie artists have Premiere, and those are just Adobe tools, to mention a couple. But there's nothing really that has understood or helped us to write stories. The web has made it easier to publish and to research and all those things, but there's nothing that makes it easier to do the actual thing, which is telling the stories that we want to tell well. And I think this is important because not everyone can draw or paint. You could learn, but it's like, to get to the point where it's enjoyable requires a huge time investment, and not everybody has that time. And not everyone has access to an expensive camera, but we all use language intuitively from childhood. And I think, this sounds a little TED talky, but like language is the thing that makes us human. Like it is the thing that enables us to sort of communicate with each other, but learn from each other, so we don't need to go through this life alone, sort of only learning from our own experiences and failures. And the reason we haven't been able to build tools for this before is that language has been too complicated for machines. But recently, with this advance of these novel types of deep learning models, we are able to actually now interact with machines as if we were to interact with other humans, with, of course, important distinctions that we'll cover. So I believe that we can now build technology that is more human and more connected and makes us more human and not less human, not only for storytelling, but for all kinds of domains. So today, I want to talk to you about how we can build applications that enable humans to interact with their devices using natural language. So my name is Jani Eväkallio. My title is also founding engineer, like Sarah. I think it means that you just joined a startup early, and then they give you that title. Repetition joke. Yeah, what else? I live in London, where I enjoy bicycling, as you can tell from my broken wrist. I enjoy Keynote Magic Move, as you're about to discover. But for the last year and a half, we've been building this software for writers, something that helps writers write, and we're using these new types of AI models. And this talk is the first time I'm speaking about this, and I think it's something that hasn't yet been covered in neither literature or presentations very well. But I think many of you over the next couple of years will be working with these technologies, so I hope that this talk can take you from the place of zero, where I started a year ago, or a year and a half ago, to at least a place where you have a more intuitive understanding on how we could use these things. Alongside myself, I need to mention two people. Ryan, our founder, and runs our design and product. With him, we've kind of discovered some of these UX principles that we'll look at. And Jeff, another one of the founders, who has taught me everything I know about machine learning and AI. And Jeff also helped me, design those or create those pieces of robot art that you saw using Midjourney. So Verb. Let's take a quick look at what it is. This talk is not about Verb, but all the examples will be from it, so I think it's important for you to know what it is. So Verb is a writing application. It's a web-based tool, but it's optimized for fiction. So it does things like it understands your characters, you can manage your research, but then it does interesting AI things, like it can give you feedback on your writing. It can ask inciting questions that make you think about your own creative work, but it also, gives you feedback on how you can improve it. And of course, it can generate text. This is what these modern AI models are really, really good for. So here's one example of it. We can also work with the text that we already have. So we can sort of give it human natural language input in order to sort of improve the creative process. Did you see the well fuck there? Is that it? So that's a little tiny model that we wrote in-house. Essentially, it takes the prompt that you have and it runs it super, super quick in 100 milliseconds and gives you a list of words so we can use it as an in-context progress bar. Sometimes it just gives you some surprising things. This is not an open AI thing. This is, we wrote it ourselves, so we're very proud of it. Anyway, so this talk will be in two parts. Actually, there's a third part, but I kind of forgot to update this slide. So part one, quick run through of the AI technology. David Khurshid already incredibly covered, reinforcement learning this morning. Thank you, David. And Clemens yesterday showed us OpenAI. So I think we're pretty well set for there, but just a quick run through. And then the beef of the talk is talking about the UIs that we build on top of it. So AI, fucking hate this term. Genuinely do not like this term at all, at least in the context where we're talking about, for a couple of reasons. I don't know, AI is this thing that has captured our imagination, in science fiction, popular culture, and it's so overloaded. And there's also applications of AI that have been, this is an old field, you have computer vision and, all kinds of AI tasks. And I feel like calling it that, I think, is a little too broad. There's a saying that when you're fundraising, you call it AI. When you're hiring, you call it machine learning. And when you're doing it, you call it linear algebra. So I did not come up with that. But anywho's, so what we mean is by, in this case, large language models. There's tons of them, number of them. But because on the function of being large, they're quite expensive to develop. So most of them are currently developed by large tech companies, like in this case, Google and Facebook and OpenAI, that's now part of Microsoft. But there is an open source one here, Bloom. You can download it from Hugging Face. You can run it if you have a GPU cluster with 384 gigs of RAM, lying around. But essentially these things are currently mainly available as APIs, but you can also run them yourself. Let's look at the one that everybody knows now, GPT-3. So GPT, short for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Generative in the sense that it is meant to generate things. It's not a classifier. It's not an analysis machine. It's not a decision-making machine. It generates. Although we'll see soon that LLMs can also be used for other types of AI tasks, like classification. It's pre-trained. This is the big part. Historically, it's been very, very difficult to build machine learning models because A, the computing power required to train them, the massive data sets required for them, but also the encoding of the expert knowledge in whatever domain that you kind of want to work in is just very, very hard because you need to have essentially a person who's expert in something tell a computer programmer how to do something and they don't speak the same language. But yeah, so this thing is trained basically on all of the internet plus, other data sets. And yeah, with pre-trained models, we can sort of achieve outcomes that normally would have taken